Yo, what's shaking, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Orangebloods Modcast here on the Orangebloods Texas Football Channel. I'm Jeff Ketchum, joined by the usual crew, Jason, Anwar, Alex. By the way, this Modcast brought to you by our new sponsors of the Modcast, Dead Soxy. That's right. Jason, you got your Dead Soxies, right?
Wait, where's my package? Where's my package? What's going on?
It's coming. Jason, last week when we talked about Dead Soxy, we learned that Alex hadn't yet received his socks.
Oh.
And Anwar and I were talking about how beautiful the packaging was and how much we love the socks. And Alex is a little bit of a jilted lover on this one. Tell everybody how much you liked your Dead Soxy socks.
Yeah, I wasn't here last week, man. I've had them for a while. This thing's been in the works, so love them to death, Alex. I take them everywhere I go. There's so many different varieties. There's no slip technology. Is effing amazing. Nothing worse than like dress socks you're constantly having to pull up. These are freaking amazing. I love them. They look great. So I'm a big fan. Even if they weren't sponsoring, I would be saying the same thing. They're freaking amazing socks.
Let me tell you, Alex, every time a woman needs to take a walk of shame from my house, I put her in Dead Soxy, and she absolutely makes it home and absolutely loves it. That's how great Dead Soxy is.
And by the way, he sends home with an autographed baseball like Derek Jeter, too, right?
Use your promo code Orangebloods to get 25% off over at deadsoxy.com. Check them out. Fellas, we are following on the heels of Steve Sarkisian's last public press gathering before Saturday night's pretty massive game on the road in Manhattan against Kansas State. Anwar will be traveling starting tomorrow, and that's like an all-day affair, right, Anwar? Like, you don't just easily get to Manhattan.
I don't know. If I was going to stay in Manhattan, then absolutely no. I'm staying in Kansas City and making a 2-hour drive into Manhattan. So you can't.
So you're flying into Kansas City, day of the game, driving into Manhattan, and then as soon as you're done, you're driving back to Kansas City.
Something more so. I'm flying in tomorrow, and then because day of the game is always difficult because if you do day of the game, you have a delay. You're screwed. You just can't make it. So. Just try to give myself that runway. So, flying on Friday, I'll work on my column on Saturday morning and then drive 2 hours there. And then when we get done, then from our show, which will probably be somewhere around 12:30 or so, I'll work on my column, then drive 2 hours back to catch an 8:30 flight in the morning. So I'll get no sleep. But I've stocked up on my 5-hour energy. But I'll pack my Dead Soxies as well because I hear it's going to be cool.
I don't mean to slam the people who live in Manhattan, Kansas, but I've been there twice, and it felt like 3 times too many. It is an armpit of a town, so much so that when you get there, you notice the stadium. It's like, oh, that's where Kansas State plays because there's nothing else to see there. I mean, it's just – get in and get out and get your W if possible, and then go stay in Lawrence or Kansas City, places that are attractive and would give you reasons for want to spend the night. Driving through Manhattan really will make you wonder why in the hell people would ever choose to live in places like that. Like, why? You have options. It's not communist China. Move somewhere else.
They do have an Applebee's.
The little apple makes sense.
You're damn right. They have to have an Applebee's in the little apple. Fellas, this is a big game. Sorry to all of the Manhattan folks catching strays today. Javier is right. They came in for some Texas football discussion about Kansas State, and here I am lighting them up on Rodolfo. I don't think Anwar goes with the 50-hour babysitter. I mean, I may be wrong, but I think he figures that situation out in advance so that he's not out $4,000.
I am flying the babysitter and her mom up to for the Kansas game in a couple of weeks because I didn't have anyone to cover my little guy. So they'll be coming up there.
You're flying the actual babysitter to Lawrence, Kansas?
Yeah. Yeah, and her mom.
Okay.
So I said this in her mom in separate rooms because I needed coverage.
So mom's hot too? Is that what you're saying?
It was coming. There's no way that the Sucabel is going to sit there and let that go.
I know it sounds like a boom, like that beginning of the B-Hub beginning, but I promise you, it's not like that. I literally need coverage, and that was the only way I can get it done.
I can't believe we're off the rails in the first 5 minutes. And it doesn't feel like I got us there, although maybe my Manhattan rant did that. Fellas, Steve Sarkisian was asked quite a bit today about second half and how do you get better as a game planner and how do you it seemed like he got 4 or 5 questions today that all had something to do with how do you stop failing late in ball games as you do. It was the topic today in ways that it hasn't been, I think, the rest of the season from a media engagement standpoint. Anwar, you were one of the ones that asked a question about this topic. What'd you think about Sark's answers and kind of if today was any indication, in the next 48 hours, every media outlet in the state is going to have some version of the Texas in the fourth quarter has problems everywhere story. And all the questions today, I think, fed into that theme.
Yeah, Catch, it's kind of the, it's not even the quiet thing out loud. It's the loud thing out loud, right? At this point, which is, you pointed it out the other day, I think, when you said something about, hey, if Texas goes into, the fourth quarter with a 31-17 lead, how comfortable are you with that? And I think this becomes a thing that's kind of been the running theme, for Texas. It hasn't been the start of games. They're good with that. It hasn't been going into halftime. That you could check that box. It's been that mid-third quarter and kind of going into the fourth that's been the Achilles heel. And, that happened a lot clearly in the Oklahoma State game where we saw, a guy that, that just didn't have it that day in Quinn Ewers, but yet we saw 49 pass attempts. The whole, are you going to use Bijan? Are you going to use Roshan? How are you going to close out these games? That becomes kind of the big thing. And so, yeah, I think everyone's kind of zeroed in on that. As far as the answers are concerned, I think you stated some of the obvious stuff as far as style and of the game and what that kind of dictates and stuff, things to that effect. But at the end of the day, you got to be able to close these things out. You just can't. It's not good enough to get a nice lead and know it's probably going to evaporate at some point. I think that becomes a thing that each coach has something that you start looking at, and that becomes the thing with that coach, for Tom Herman, maybe it wasn't winning the close games or the binder or fourth downs or things to that effect. And that becomes the thing that you start focusing on. And I think this is now the thing with Sarkisian is getting a lead. Or can you close it out in the fourth quarter? Can you win on the road? I think that's the thing that he has to prove, this upcoming weekend.
Jason, did you think he was defensive at all? I thought his answer to I think it was Joe Cook that asked one of the first questions about this and was kind of as a play caller, what do you do? How do you do it? And Sarkisian just kind of very shortly answered, I do a better job. And is a little snippy about it. And then I didn't think he had that attitude with the rest of the questions, but the very first time he was asked about it, he was a little defensive sounding to me. What'd you think?
I didn't read it that way. I mean, he kind of threw himself under the bus, and I think it was just, hey, it's a very simple answer. I got to be a better play caller. But, if there's one thing we are learning from all these press conferences, we're going to hear about how good the practices were.
They were good this week.
Of course. How every game takes on a life of its own. And, that's what he said in response to Anwar partially. And it makes sense. Listen, I mean, do you want to try to kill the clock and run it with Bijan? Or are you going to stay aggressive? And it depends on how your defense is playing and just the feel of the game. But I did think it was pretty interesting, like you said, Ketch, that multiple people found ways to ask that question. I mean, you might as well just say, Liz, Sark, how do you keep from choking in the second half? I mean, that's what these questions were, right? I mean, they weren't phrased that way, of course, but how do you keep from collapsing in the second half after you build a big lead? And I mean, his answers were, I think, truthful. I didn't think he was, I don't think he was spiteful or short necessarily. I think he just said, hey, I've got to do a better job. And how do you do that? I mean, yeah, you have to kind of look at the entire game and how it's playing out and how your defense is played and how many snaps have they been on the field. If they've been on the field for a long time, you're going to try to run the ball. But, I think personally, my thinking is we've seen Texas take these multiple score leads, in 2 of their 3 losses this year. And then I don't remember how many times last year, but a bunch. And then they get too conservative, it feels like to me. So, man, hey, your motto is all gas, no brakes. Keep the pedal to the metal, man. And, 2 scores clearly isn't enough. You're up by 4 scores. That's a whole other different ballgame, maybe. But, keep the pedal to the metal. Let's see that all gas, no brakes put into action here. So, but it is a legitimate concern and very legitimate questions. How do you keep this? It just keeps happening over and over. What do you have to change to keep it from happening again? If you are up by 10 on Kansas State in the fourth quarter, what are you going to do differently so that you guys don't lose this game?
Alex, I'm going to put you on the spot with what I think is a little bit of a difficult question that I couldn't completely answer, but I wanted to toss your way.
Okay.
Right. So I'm warning you in advance.
All right.
Feels like, and Sark is among these coaches that I think has a reputation for. Andy Reid has it, right? First 15 plays, that scripted beginning of games, the offense looks so good. Is there anybody in coaching off the top of your head that has a reputation for that on the back end, that in the third and fourth quarters, that's when you see they either have it scripted in a way that's different or their offenses get better to close games out? I had a hard time trying to think of somebody that has that obvious reputation of their teams get consistently better throughout games and are at their best at the end of games. Anything jump out at all?
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, it's I think that's just about, you think about who's the best with always making the adjustments, right? And just being Michael Lombardi, the great Michael Lombardi, who has his own podcast and he's on the VSiN, and he worked with Belichick and he worked under Belichick and he worked with Saban and he worked with Al Davis and he worked with Bill Walsh and all these guys. And what he talks about, as the head coach, you got to be before the game, during the game. Your job is the chief figure out officer, is what he always says in his books. And that, to me, it's not only coming into the game. If you're Bill Belichick saying, okay, what are we going to do? Famously, Belichick comes into game, and this is more from a defensive standpoint, but he comes into game saying, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to take away their best weapon. We're going to take away what they do best and make them beat us left-handed, right? And he'll do that by saying, we're not going to put our top corner on their best receiver. We're going to put our top corner on the number 2 wide receiver, and we're just going to bracket the hell out of the number 1 wide receiver and not let him get over the top, not let him get open, stuff like that. And then during the game, what he'll do is just adjust and pick up points whenever they can. So I think about Belichick as a guy who, through the course of the game, consistently figures things out. I don't necessarily, he's not an offensive guru that has everything scripted out and stuff, but he's a chief figure out officer and he's an adjuster. I think that's probably what's most important.
It's funny, Anwar, one of the names that popped into my head. So Steve jumps in and says, hate to say it, but Lincoln Riley. My thought on Lincoln is that his offenses look pretty similarly. I never think that in the third quarter or the fourth quarter that his offenses stop being productive. I think they're typically pretty productive throughout the games, but as soon as Steve said that, an OU fan jumped in stupefied to say Lincoln is good in the first half and not in the second half. I love that that the question made an Oklahoma fan jump into the chat and make sure that a little bit of shade was thrown on Lincoln. Anybody jump out to you? Kind of the same question. I guess I'm asking this because I wonder if a lot of these questions that were asked, it's one thing to lose the games, right? I mean, it's one thing that your team gets into the fourth quarter and blows leads. And I think that's the emphasis for this question being asked to Sark. As Jason said, stop choking away leads and losing games. But think there's a long list of coaches that have a big reputation for doing the things that we are kind of demanding of Sark, which is make those changes, adjust, be better in the third and fourth quarters than you were in the first and second quarters. I don't get the sense that there's a long laundry list of guys that are truly successful of doing the things that Sarkisian himself is saying he needs to do.
Were you asking me or were you asking Anwar?
I said Anwar.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You know what? You probably have to point to the teams that win the most, Catch, to really kind of do that math, right? So you probably start with like Ryan Day at Ohio State, right? I mean, that seems to be kind of a start to finish. That would kind of jump out to me just a little bit as far as what they're able to do as far as closing out games. And then I'd have to really look up like a team like a Georgia or something to that effect. As far as closing out like that would be the ones that are just the obvious for me would be like who's known for closing out games the most would probably be the teams that they probably win the most. And I hate to be Captain Obvious guy, but Ryan Day would probably be the guy that does it for me.
Someone in the chat, Javier, took one that was in my mind. TCU this year has certainly done a good job under Sonny Dykes. They've started slowly, really came on in the second half. Is that because they just start making better plays? Is that because they're making adjustments? I don't know. I haven't watched TCU that closely, but
they've fallen behind big in a couple of games.
But they've found a way to battle back in all of them. It's interesting to me, though, the recipe for controlling games in the second half, if you have a lead, is what? Run the football, play good defense. Texas has 2 NFL running backs on its roster, and probably the best running back in the country. The defense has problems getting off field on third and fourth downs, but they've got half of that recipe in their back pocket every single week, yet they still cannot find a way to close these games out. So, I don't know. I mean, TCU's done a good job of it this year. But to me, it's more on the defense and the offense. Yeah, I think Sark gets maybe a little bit too conservative, but maybe not quite as creative in the second half. Catch, you and I say it every week. Get Xavier Worthy involved on some tosses and quick things in the screen game or jet sweeps or whatever. Get him in space. We just don't see a lot of creativity in the second half for Texas. It doesn't seem like, and then ultimately the defense ends up wearing down and just can't get off the field, and then the other team finds a way usually to make 1 or 2 more plays, and that's been the difference. So I do also think it is kind of a snowball effect. I think last year we saw it. It was a snowball effect, and it's almost contagious. Losing close games can be contagious. You've got to break that cycle because I think winning close games can be contagious too. But, boy, Texas is having a hard time breaking that cycle and taking that first step.
Anwar, it's a little interesting. When you were talking about Ryan Day, there's a smart-ass component in me that was like the real answer in college football is that the best offensive minds usually blow teams out and aren't really playing close games in the third and fourth quarter other than a couple of times a season. And Texas hasn't gotten to a level yet where they're consistent. So they find themselves in these games that, quite frankly, Ryan Day at Ohio State, or a little bit different with Lincoln Riley. He's had but you think about Oklahoma, they would just blow teams out. The best offenses in college football are playing their B teamers in the third and fourth quarters and aren't in a position to really consistently have to even answer this question, which is maybe it's that way in the NFL too, right? Like the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills blow out a lot of teams. So it doesn't always, you're not always noticing that their quarterbacks are great in the fourth quarter when there's a game on the line. Maybe that's the key. Sarkisian just has to build the program up to a point where he doesn't really have to coach in the third and fourth quarters like he does now. When Jason, I guess I started this off by bringing up Anwar. We throw it up to everybody. Like this team, when you're kind of mediocre in a borderline top 25 team, it probably means that you're playing in a bunch of coin flip games, which means you're going to lose more coin flip games. And this thing just kind of has a life of its own that doesn't go away until you either start winning all of those games or you stop playing in them.
Yeah, but Texas has lost. If it's a coin flip game, it should be about 50-50 in those games in theory, right? I mean, I have to go back through the schedule for last year and this year, but Texas has lost a hell of a lot more close games than they've won. So, I mean, at some point there is some dumb luck involved too. But yeah,
and there's also just, I mean, there's also it was the culture and the coaching talent, and like I said, the ability to adjust. I thought of another one. It's an NFL example, but what about Mike Vrabel? Like every time you watch the Titans,
him and Ravens. I mean, those are two teams that close out close games. Yeah.
Every time you watch the Titans, you're just like, man, this team's got no flashy players. You know, they have obvious weaknesses everywhere. Even this last week versus Houston, whenever they had Malik Willis back there at quarterback. You know, he had only 1 week of practice. So obviously, Houston sucks, but still, they knew. They knew, what are they going to do? They're going to hand the ball off to Derrick Henry, who's gotten over 200 yards the last 3 times he's faced this team, right? Like they're going to pound us with this guy. And somehow Vrabel comes in there, like Houston has the playbook, and Vrabel comes out with a win. And every time, man, towards the end of every season recently, you look down and you're like, how is Vrabel and these Titans like on top? You know, like a number 3 seed or whatever.
Playoffs, though.
Well, right. You know, through the course of seasons, man, those guys, that team is scraped by with close wins, not really looking all that good. So obviously, there are some coaches that can be differentiators whenever it's just sort of a mediocre level of talent or whatever else that exists.
He also played great defense too, though, ball control and run the ball. So the things I mentioned earlier, yeah. But
that when we talk about the offensive collapses, it probably doesn't get talked about enough because the Texas offense isn't staying on the field. But Anwar, Texas defense gives up a lot of points. I mean, I went back and looked at their fourth quarter numbers a couple of weeks ago, and it was ugly, the disparity in points when they've had these leads. And then, Baylor runs off like a 20-3 run, and Oklahoma State will go for like 24-0 or something like that. Oklahoma last year in the second half. Like, offense has to be better, but this is another area where the defense – Texas is playing good defense in the second halves, especially in the fourth quarter. They're winning more of these games, and they stop being sound and good tackling units and able to get teams off the field and create turnovers. It's been just as much of a defensive problem as an offensive problem, even if it's easy to point to the offense and say, you guys aren't scoring any points.
Yeah, it's kind of tough because when they kind of, go to, the defense, whether, they're not doing it. And Alex will probably speak to this, a little bit. It seems like when teams are attacking them a little bit in bunches, they're not playing, bump and run or anything to that effect, kind of off of them a little bit. It seems like there's either a technique problem that's happening on defense that they kind of end up getting exploited, a little bit. They've talked about the middle of the field that somehow just becomes this Atlantic Ocean of just opportunities for other teams. But, I think there's something, whether it's schematically or not, but it just seems like they go in like these bunch formations. And then the DBs, kind of end up struggling, a little bit. And so again, because of that and how they're attacking, it looks like the middle of the field opens up, way too much. And then they end up kind of getting exploited. Like Alex said, am I 100% off from what you're kind of seeing as far as that second half is concerned?
No, I mean, like we've talked a lot about the sideline to sideline speed of the linebackers. And we've talked about those bunch sets. We've talked about them cheating over and opening up the seam and all kinds of stuff like that. But you also have these guys, there is a little bit of a lack of speed at linebacker. There's a small bit of a lack of athleticism outside of Overshown. I mean, I think that's fair to say. Jalen Ford's been really good, but he's been a big time volume tackler. He's not a 3-hole drop demon. He did have the one really good, that really important interception, I believe, down in the end zone. I forget what game it was, but I think we've seen that once out of him. We've had and here's the other thing. We've had nickel play that's up and down. Jalen Gilbo's like a 35% contributor who came into the season really hot, who's made some flash plays. But Gilbo's had some issues when that stuff gets funneled inside to him. We talked about the linebackers, the safeties have been off and on. And now, hey, can I just, not to take this a completely different direction, but did they ask I didn't listen to the press conference, but I saw something on Twitter. Did they ask about what did he say about Ryan Watson? I can't believe that Anthony Cook is going to play. Like, what did he say? Like, did he say he was fine to me?
Yeah, that's why I'm laughing.
What did he say?
He said they look good to me.
Yeah, whatever that means.
How can Anthony Cook play with a broken forearm?
He didn't say that. He said they look good to me.
Yeah, that may mean he's got a pretty cast on with nice colors. I mean, who knows what
it's a non-answer. It's all his injury answers are non-answers. It's literally, it's just that they're just he'd be great in an interrogation room. Like if some shit went down and they're asking Sark questions, like he'd be the perfect guy in First 48 that wouldn't crack. Like
you're exactly right.
He wouldn't say a damn thing that would give the detectives any help.
Your problem with that question, Anwar, is you didn't mean to, but you asked it in a way that allowed him to answer it. Like, maybe the better way is what is there, and he still would have avoided the question. But you're like, how did they look or whatever? Oh, they look pretty good to me, as opposed to like specifically, will either of those guys play this weekend? He probably doesn't answer that question anyway.
Probably doesn't. Probably doesn't.
This has been a year. I don't get this avoidance of they're 5-3. It hasn't worked.
Correct.
If they were undefeated,
he was more forthcoming last year. It seems like he's gotten more guarded. Am I crazy? Am I the one that thinks that?
I mean, look, it's weird. And like of all the things to nitpick, we won't nitpick this because it sounds like nitpicking. But the lack of transparency was, even when Ewers first got hurt, like he wouldn't even just come out and say it'll probably be a couple of weeks, but we're optimistic he'll return sooner than maybe some of the report. He could have said anything. It's just the same non-answer. And all it does is make people like us dig around through other sourcing to try to find the actual answers. Which, oh, by the way, I guess we need to do for the war room tonight, right? I need to dig around and ask what's been going on with those guys.
Hey, is a guy with a broken arm going to play this week? Like, what are we asking? Sure.
I mean, like I kept saying, people are like, well, the other side's reporting he could be right back. I'm like, dude, I can understand Jason Pierre-Paul wearing a giant club, and he only has to wear it on his hands. Like a forearm, that goes from here to here. So, and I don't think it's a deal where you can have your hand free, right? Like in a cast, the cast kind of goes around like this. You play safety. There's a chance you might have to handle the ball. There's certainly a chance you're going to have to.
You need your arms.
Tackle. Like, I'm just like, and it can't just be the cast, right? You take the cast and you take all that heavy foam stuff and you wrap it like out here like a transformer. He's not going to play. It's not.
He's like Bumblebee out on the field, like just yeah. Let's change direction slightly and just look at Kansas State. This is usually a question I ask right off the top, and most of the Modcasts would do. Jason, I'll come to you first. We can just go around the room. How you feeling about this game this week? The stakes are obviously huge. Very early in the press conference, Sarkisian was asked about, hey, you guys can't lose a third game. I think it was Cedric Golden that brought it up, that a loss would be pretty devastating towards what you said was the goal of this season. It's the elephant in the room, man. Can't lose again, and this is going to be a really difficult game.
Yeah, I posted our matchups, the matchups on Orangebloods this morning. Tough one to kind of pinpoint again because you don't know what's going on with Kansas State's quarterback situation. Is it going to be Adrian Martinez? Is it going to be Will Howard, who's played last week and the majority of the week before that and played really well? People I talked to in Manhattan, they didn't know yet as of last night. They thought it won't be Martinez unless he's truly 100%. So read into that what you will, but nobody really seems to know. I mean, Deuce Vaughn makes his team go. I mean, he's the type of guy, kind of like Bijan, and you can make an argument that Deuce can even be more explosive when he's really hitting on all cylinders. I mean, he's a guy that can take over a game. Texas has to keep him under wraps, I think, early on. Don't let him get going early. Build up some confidence. If it's Will Howard, which I don't know why I'm kind of leaning that direction at quarterback, he's played really well, but this is the same Will Howard that wasn't very good last year. Even Kansas State people are like, he's been really good, but he's had a couple lucky plays that have gone his way that have helped his stats a little bit. So I think maybe he comes back down to earth a little bit. It's a really good Kansas State defense. I mean, not world beaters maybe in any one thing, but they've got some pretty good individual talent, and there's really no weaknesses on defense. So I think statistically, it's, I believe, like the number 1 ranked pass defense in pass efficiency defense. I have to go back through my notes. I think 3rd in passing yards. But, it's a game where they're going to make Quinn Ewers. They're going to kind of muddy it up. Oklahoma State was able to do it. We've said it with a team like Iowa State. They just find a way to kind of make you have to work for those yards. And, Quinn Ewers is going to have to be on his game. But on paper catch, again, not without knowing, is Adrian Martinez going to be at quarterback? How is that going to impact K-State's running game? Without knowing some of those dynamics, feels like a pretty close game on paper. I did think it was funny. The Kansas State person I talked to one this week, he's like, I asked about special teams. He said, this feels like a game where special teams will be big. He said, this is the worst special teams they've had in a long, long time. Not very good. And then he starts talking. He's like, yeah, they've only had 2 punt returns for touchdowns. They're like, their second kick returns. Their place kicking's not been great. But I'm like, oh, only 2 punt returns and their second kickoff returns. So, this is a game where I think Texas is going to have to play a clean brand of football. They're going to have to play clean special teams football to win. And obviously, Texas on the road, we all know their issues there.
Those guys used to having like Grammatica brothers back there and stuff, right? Just automatic.
Like 6 special teams touchdowns on the year. Yeah. Anything less than that, they're not satisfied. So,
well, catch last night. If you guys are listening today, if you haven't checked out my show from last night, feel free.
I caught a little bit of it on War. It was posted on the board. Man, I'll tell you what, man. El Presidente and Tom G are some goats. Those guys are cool, man.
Are absolute freaking goats. Like, I don't know how the hell I stumbled into that, but they are freaking good. I mean, I'm damn near about to just give them their own show and just take a step back, at this point, and just let them do their thing. But I just want them to get some more reps. But that's got to be coming sooner than later. But I had a guy on by the name of Mitch Fortner, who's the PA guy, does for them at K-State. Gave me some really, really good insight into them. Jason, I'm a little bit more concerned than you are based off of the information that Mitch kind of gave me. First of all, we look at K-State, they lead the Big 12 in sacks, okay? They've got 23. They've got a guy that I won't be able to pronounce his last name. But
they've got a few of those guys. But Aniduke Uzoma, I mean, that guy's a second nationally in sacks and first-round type draft pick, so yeah.
Yeah, just that, right? So they call him Big Felix, okay? But he has 7.5 sacks so far, but he is a kind of an NFL prospect. They also got another guy on the line with 3 sacks, as well. He says, the DBs, they're really fast on a defensive back perspective. And he talked about, when they asked him about a little bit about that TCU loss, he goes, people talk about the loss of Adrian Martinez in that game. He said what they don't talk about is that K-State lost about 5 to 6 other starters in that game as well. Key contributors. So that he goes, that played a huge part for them in that loss. Those guys would be back, healthy. Now we're talking about the road environment. Apparently, it's going to be Harley night at the stadium, which means they're bringing in. This is like, it's not for homecoming, but for an important game, they will have like 75 Harleys like circling the field before the game, revving up the engines, trying to get everyone pumped up. So, trying to get that loud, crazy ass atmosphere going for them. So there's just a lot of variables that are in there. And even when you talk about the quarterback situation, while Will Howard's more of a passer, because of what he was able to do and because of how this defense plays so well, I'm a little bit more, I'm probably not as, 50-50 on that one, maybe 55-45, maybe a little bit more towards the K-State thing. But, they seem to really have a solid team, from top to bottom, going so far, even with a backup quarterback. And Alex went crazy.
I was just watching Big Felix's highlights. I didn't know about this guy. Not number 91.
It's Hell's Angels night, too. I didn't know that. 75 Harleys? Like what? What? I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
Are you riding a Harley down from Kansas City?
Nah, I don't. I would ride a Harley over one of those crotch rockets because those things are just, never good. I feel like Harley riders are more responsible, but no. But apparently their goal is and he said, like, look, it's only about 55,000, but he goes, it'll be sold out, and and they will be doing their best to intimidate, as much as they can. And it's like there's some hate that K-State has for Texas because they're leaving the conference, so they will have that as well.
We got to get a picture of Anwar in somebody's sidecar cruising around that stadium.
Well, dude,
He's too tall for that.
This is going to be the biggest test. This will be the big number 91 is going to be the biggest test. These guys, I can just tell already. It's going to be the biggest test that they've had, besides besides the Alabama guys. It's just he's really good. He's a unit. He's really good. Fast, long arms, put together so well, so sturdy. His reach, speed to power conversion. Just really, really good. Good at the point of attack.
Does he line up on both sides?
Yeah, yes, and he lines up over the center too sometimes. That's going to be tough, man. Like everyone will get a piece of that guy if he's. And you said he's healthy and he's fine. How many sacks does he have this year?
7.5 in 8 games.
He's got 3 against Texas Tech, and then
that's a good-looking player, man.
You like him just off the cuff more than Tyree Wilson of Tech?
Oh, God. Then the Tech guy? This guy? Yes.
Yeah, because Wilson's being talked about as a first-day kind of guy.
I mean, you can see it with this guy. I'm not sure you see it with old Tyree.
Just watching Alex, it just reminds me of those reaction videos.
Yes,
I can just sit here and watch Alex react to the highlights just for the next 10 minutes.
It's a pretty long list of highlights.
He's like, you're gonna need more than 10 minutes.
The first time these kids ever heard some singer and they're like blown away. That's Alex watching these.
It's yes. I've told Anwar I like to watch black people react to Chris Stapleton. It always delivers. They never see it coming. They're like, wait a minute, that guy sings like that. Every time he makes a run, they stop the video, and it's like, it's our greatest contribution to society lately. It feels like Texas. This could be one of those games. It could be a fist fight. Like Kansas State wants to fight. And I just never know. Like if I knew Texas was going to play its A game, I think their A game is better than Kansas State's A game. I think they've got better talent across the field. But it's so – they're the ultimate box of chocolates, this Texas team. In the program itself, I don't know. Like I know Bijan will show up, and I know – Roshan will show up, but I don't know this season if Xavier Worthy will show up. I mean, he's been really hit or miss all season long, and the quarterback questions are the quarterback questions, and the defensive questions, you just shrug your shoulders. Like if I knew that Adrian Martinez was going to start, would I absolutely think that Texas would stop that running game? Not really. But if Will Howard starts, do I have enough faith in the Texas pass defense that they'll turn his night into a nightmare? I don't feel that way either. So it's like, what kind of game is this team prepared to play? Because I feel like K-State, they'll be ready to fight for 60 minutes. And we just spent half the show 15 minutes ago talking about how this team doesn't quite do that on both sides of the ball. That wasn't really towards anybody in particular, but, anybody?
Texas needs to win one of those kind of games where it's a brawl that goes down to the wire, and that could do a lot for this team's confidence if they could win a fist fight of a game that's a close game for 4 quarters. And people don't expect Texas to win those kind of games based on what we've seen last year and so far this year. They expect Texas to fold, and if it's a fist fight, people wouldn't describe this Texas team as tough necessarily. This could go a long way to changing that narrative and giving Texas some confidence. So we'll see if they can get it done.
Well, one of the things I talked about, Catch, last night as I kind of one of my parting shots in the evening is, but the thing that Steve Sarkisian can't afford is, a loss will just create an apathy amongst this fan base, So, that if they go into this, if they know that they're 5-4 with 3 games left to determine if they're going to the Texas Bowl versus Memphis versus whatever, like, you know how this shit goes. Like, everyone's going to check out. Like, the TCU thing won't have the same meaning and won't have the same ring at that point. The Kansas thing will be what it is. No one will show up for the Baylor game right after Thanksgiving. Like, everyone will go through the motions. And then, for Sarkisian, if they drop to 5-4, keeping that the team together and keeping them, because then at 5-4, I'm sorry, like, we're one loss away from getting seniors to a bowl game. Like, I hate it. You know how much I hate it, but that's all it's going to be about. It's all it's going to be about is, hey, I want to make sure the team that didn't go to a bowl game last year, that we get these guys to go to one last one, this and that. Then it becomes who's going to play in the bowl game, who isn't going to play in the bowl game. And so, we shift to recruiting, and, that's kind of going to be our focus. But so to keep the fan base engaged and to keep, what little that they have left, what they're clinging to. We know what it looked like on our website last week as far as just a shoulder shrug, from fans as far as like, I don't really care anymore, or at least I'll take a week off. I mean, when you talk about a must win, just to keep everyone engaged, you got to be able to pull off something, this upcoming weekend.
I want to ask everybody, is there a prediction on this? But is this a big? It's funny, right? Because if they win this weekend, then TC suddenly they're ranked again. They're 6-3 instead of 5-4, which feels significantly different, even though it's just a game. And then if they win their last 3, they can play their way into the Big 12 championship game. So it makes the TCU game really important all of a sudden. Is this a more difficult game than next week against TCU, or is TCU just being the better team right now make that game more difficult? Does anybody have a feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I got asked this in my chat yesterday, and I've actually thought a lot about it. Whenever I don't know, we do so many of these lately. I've sat in for you. Me and Jason did for you on Monday, Catch. Is this when we talked about this on War, when we ranked sort of what we thought? Yeah, like the run out. What was it? Okay. So I think I had trouble thinking that this team would go 2-2 down the stretch. I think 1-3 or 3-1 down the stretch is most likely, precisely because of what you just said, Ketchum. These 2 games to me are impossible to predict. I think they probably come out of them with 1, but I'm just like, well, okay, on this side you got a team that's 1-6, who on the road under Sark, who's going to play a ranked opponent, a good opponent that just beat the team that beat you 48-0 with their backup quarterback, right? And like we talked about, the transitive property doesn't apply in college football. But so just because this team beat that team doesn't mean that the team is going to lose to them just because they beat the other one, right? But I mean, it's kind of telling. And so you have that. And then on the other hand, you have TCU coming in, who feels like a better football team, a better coach football team. Really good quarterback play right now. Really just, I mean, a dynamo of a wide receiver option. But Texas is a completely different football team from everything that we can observe, everything that we know. It's a small sample. It's only, it's getting to be a bigger sample, but they're a different team at home. They're just different. Right? And so to me, TCU and Kansas State, well, I think TCU's a little bit better. I think they're a little bit better. I just think the whole road thing makes me feel like maybe the Kansas State game could be the harder one to come away with a win from. But, geez, I mean, neither of them are gimmies. I can't believe Texas is favored in this game. I'll be surprised to see, regardless of the outcome of this game, whether Texas is favored versus TCU.
I think they will be.
I do too. Well,
what if they lose?
Assume they don't get the shit kicked out of them this week. I think they will be too, Catch. Texas gets a lot of benefit of the doubt, it seems like, from Vegas. I think Kansas State and TCU are pretty evenly matched. I'm looking, TCU did beat them, of course, 38-28. That was in Fort Worth. Kansas State was up 28-10. TCU scored 28 unanswered points. A lot of that was after Martinez went out. But is that right? I'm not sure about
Yeah.
that. But yeah, they scored 28 unanswered for sure. But I just think Texas on the road versus Texas at home, I think almost this is the tougher game. I mean, I think TCU is probably a slightly better team than Kansas State, but based on what we've seen through more than a year and a half of Texas on the road under Sark, I think this is a trickier game. Is it a winnable game? Of course, absolutely. I mean, Texas is favored, so of course it's a winnable game. But I almost feel like TCU is a bit of a I'm not saying easier game, but I think it's a little bit less tricky than this game, maybe.
Jason, Jason, I feel exactly the same.
I'm kind of with you guys too. Like I'm much more impulsive towards thinking that Texas can beat TCU because it's at home. And there are days when Texas at home under Sark, they'll blow some people out, and it just you don't quite see that as much. Obviously on the road, which is why I think I wouldn't be surprised if they beat TCU, and I kind of Anwar will be surprised if they do win Saturday in Kansas State. It would be a really big statement of intent to go on the road and win in Manhattan. And I think it might make people start to believe again that something's possible before this season is over.
Yeah, I guess I have to be the oddball here, and probably say to myself like I think Texas Tech is Texas Tech TCU is a really hard out. I mean, they've got some hellified skill position guys on offense. I mean, when you look at they've got arguably one of the best wide receivers in the country. They've got one of the better running backs in the country as well. And, they've got a quarterback that can kill you, in the air, and with his feet. And, that's tough. And now TCU, the one thing about them is that you're going to have to get in a track meet with them. Like if you just think to yourself that you're going to slow it down, it's not going to happen. Now, the TCU weakness obviously is their defense. And we know that defense is going to give up some points, so it ends up being a closer game potentially. But they're going in the meat of the schedule right now. These last four are definitely the toughest teams that they have faced, and I don't know if defeating West Virginia at home or Iowa State at home this season equates to my belief that they can have that same kind of success against TCU, kind of as Alex is talking about. As far as one team beating the other and how does that translate? It doesn't always translate. I think TCU is pretty damn good. I mean, at the end of the day, TCU is a team that, people are kind of ticked off that they aren't ranked higher as far as the CFP is concerned. Like you're talking about a team that if people beat the drum enough, could potentially, be in a top four team, so I'm to me, I think they're both hard. Like so we're clear, they're both pretty tough. And I agree with Alex. Like they'll down the stretch. Like I am going to give them Kansas. As a win, which sounds stupid on my part. To be honest with you, just like why would you even do that? Like you just fall for that banana in the tailpipe again. But if you ask me which one's the toughest one, okay, I'll probably go just K-State by a hair just because it's on the road. But I can't talk myself into TCU.
Well, I can't. Let me be clear. I'm not saying that I'm locking in TCU as a W. I'm just saying which one feels just a little harder. So I mean, I think I'm more along your line than more with you than I'm against you with what you're saying. It's like I don't feel good about either of these games. I hope Texas proves me wrong over the course of the next 2 weeks.
Well, I know this. Orangebloods.com and the Orangebloods Texas Football Channel. We need some W's, man. We need some W's. We like it when people are interested and invested and thirsty. We don't like it when they're like, I get it. So let's jump into parting shots. Anybody want to lead us off today?
I got nothing, man. So you guys can just pass on through me. Wish you guys the best of luck. Yeah, dude, man. I'm about to have to run. So
how's that cat?
That cat's. So I don't even want to. So basically, I've been stuck with a kitten, and this cat jumps in the damn water. It jumps in the water in the bath, And the thing is about it, it's like if it wasn't a little kitten that could haul ass that I can't catch, it'd be fine. But the thing about kittens is they jump up on top of stuff. Last night I jumped and I'm not talking just jumped in the water like up to his elbows or something with my son. He's in there like swimming. He's up to his neck, like swimming a doggy paddling and stuff. This little cat, and he jumps out of there. He runs up, and this little bastard jumped on top of the cable box where I had my TV on top of it, and just shook all off and got all water all over the cable box in the middle of the baseball game. I'm telling you, man, it's a long story for how I got swindled into ending up with this barn cat being an indoor kitten, but it has to do with coyotes outside, and my kids falling in love with the cat, and the other barn cat we got died, and they're just like, they're like, we got to take him inside. He can't die, So now I got a little house cat, and
that
cat's
going to live till almost 2040, right?
Pat, like my kids will be done with college and they'll come home and I'm this stupid cat.
You're gonna love that cat over time. Like it'll be like Lulu for you, Jason.
Well,
it'll be the cat that his soulmate cat.
That's right.
He'll need to stop acting like such a creep.
You got a couple of years before you can get the stray out of him and completely domesticate a cat that's already lived outside the majority of its life, and now you're making a house cat. Good luck with that, by the way.
Thank you.
It's very simple process.
I can't believe he jumps in the water. Like that's just like so odd, man. It's weird.
It's because it's a stray. Like those cats don't have rules.
Yeah, man. No rules, just right. This is crazy.
Jason, you got any parting shots?
Nothing prepared, nothing too sexy. It's Texas on the road this week. It's not a big recruiting weekend, but that TCU game is shaping up to be a big recruiting weekend. I've confirmed a few more visitors this week that'll be in for that game. I actually got a text from Marcus Deal this morning, the defensive lineman. He was coming in that weekend for an official visit. I haven't even put this on Orangebloods. It'll be in the war room tonight, and I'll elaborate. But he's probably going to have a playoff game, so he won't be coming. But the good news for Texas is Texas is going to get his last official visit. He was kind of debating on that, but it is going to be Texas to get that last official visit. Just a matter of when. It probably won't be TCU weekend. So I still think that one trends pretty well for Texas. They got a JUCO defensive lineman coming in. Bo Davis is really trying to kind of load up on his defensive line. I think more than myself and a lot of people expected. He's really trying to load up on interior defensive linemen. He just offered another one last week. So anyways,
He's about to lose a bunch.
Yeah. Assuming all those guys, go as we expected, they will. Then he's going to lose. You're right, Alex. He's going to lose a lot of interior defensive line depth. So we'll have more on that in the war room. A little bit. I'll elaborate and go into my thoughts a little bit more. So that and some other things in the Orangebloods war room tonight.
Mr. Richardson, you got anything?
Yeah, well, my thing is actually a follow-up with Alex because you weren't here last week, Catch, but Alex revealed to us his Halloween game plan for his kids. The candy, it's a dice game.
On Monday, Monday, yeah.
The dice game.
It's the Squid Game.
Brief recap, Alex, because Catch missed it.
All right, well, you go to the old YouTube, you get the Saturday Night Live Squid Game song that Pete Davidson sings, right? And then you get that thing playing about how you got to play the Squid Game. And then what you do is you roll the dice. If you roll an even number, you can choose one chocolate piece of candy. If you roll an odd number, you can choose one fruity piece of candy. But if you roll the 1, you get no candy. And you got to roll and you got to roll and your sibling doesn't get any candy, even if they've already won their game. So they get their candy taken back away. And
the kids are young. It's not like we're talking like high school kids.
And there's more.
And if you roll the second time, if you're the loser of the Squid Game and you roll another one, all the bags of candy all go in the trash and the Squid Game's over for the year.
Yes. So my party shot is I want to know how the game went. I want to know how it went this week.
They love the Squid Game. If my kids were here right now, they'd come in and tell you how much they love it. They absolutely love it.
Except they played the Squid Game and lost and are no longer here?
No, they don't get thrown away. The bags of candy get thrown away.
Yeah, they
I
probably love it
don't.
now.
I have a hard time believing that your kids are like, you know what game is awesome? The one where Dad tries to throw away our candy.
Hey, at some point that candy's got to get thrown away. At some point,
Does it?
Or eating.
yes. You let your kids eat candy all year? Come on, dude. No.
Where did you make this up? I know you love your father, Alex. So, did your father make you play a version of the Squid Game? Did you learn this and you're passing it down? Or is this cockamamie playing something you invented?
No, I invented this thing all the way, dude. I'm telling you, the family loves it. It's a great, it's a great bonding game.
I'm gonna try it out.
You guys should try it. Try it.
Try it out.
It's a good way to keep your kids from being diabetic. Eventually, they roll a 1, and they don't have to eat. They don't get to eat any of that candy.
That's my thing. I want to know how the game went this week.
It went fine. Neither's rolled a 1 yet. Neither's rolled a 1.
So they only get one piece of candy. They only get to one piece of candy a day if all goes well.
Yeah. Yeah,
that'd be a bad
on the night of Halloween, I'll let them eat whatever while they're trick or treating and stuff. But no, I mean, you can't. What, you can let the kids go hog wild on the candy?
So you do this? Well, it made it sound like you did this on Halloween night.
No. They have bags and bags and bags of candy, right, left over from Halloween. Like, do y'all's kids not bring home just like a whole sack full of candy? It's like
not as much candy as you're describing.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm talking 2 like like the Ziploc like gallon bags. Ones we've switched them out. We've like taken all the chocolate ones and taken all the fruity ones, and it basically each fills up a bag. And like, yeah, you can't just have that laying around for kids to eat after school or something. That's what's got.
Okay, so you let them have some candy on Halloween.
Yes, and now they got to play a game every day if they want one piece of candy. But God forbid
after
they
dinner,
one.
You have to finish your dinner to play the Squid Game.
This is thrown out.
Yeah. Yep.
What's your Christmas tradition, Alex? Any plans for presents?
All right, look, on that note, do us a solid. Give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done that on our quest to get to 15,000 subscribers. Obviously, tell your neighbors, tell anybody that's interested in Texas football or not. Look, if you know a Kansas State or TCU fan, let them know. We'll have content going through the weekend and next week. They might find a little bit interesting. They're sure as hell not going to find any Kansas State or TCU content that's as interesting as what we're doing. And shout out to Dead Soxy. Go to deadsoxy.com. Use the promo code Orangebloods and get your 25% off discount on the socks that keep on giving. Just ask Jason Sukumel. For Jason, Anwar, and Alex, the cat lover and candy denier, we'll see you guys next week.